Hey, this is Daryl, and welcome back to my channel. In this video, I interview Sean Galla. It's actually an interview on my podcast, Real Men, Real Conversations, so make sure you check that out. But in this interview, we go deep in regards to how men can face challenges and get through them by having other supportive people around them. So it's a great interview. Check it out. And make sure you check out my podcast, Real Men, Real Conversations. And you can check out the information just below here in the description area. Okay, so check that out. Here's the interview. Anyways, hey, I'm glad we were able to connect and have this conversation. I'm really excited to talk to you, Sean, because your background's pretty interesting. You know, I've watched a few things on you in your men's group, and you know, I've talked to other people in the past. I've been coaching for like 16 years,
Great.
and some are really, they have a very specific topic or expertise per se, which is cool. You know, I think that's really awesome. And then there's some that have a more wide, more of a wide lens. And I don't know, I feel like with your men's group, and maybe we'll start off with that, with just for our listeners, you probably have done this 1,000 times, but just kind of a background on, who's Sean Galla. If I pronounce your last, I pronounce that right? Galla?
Yeah, you got it.
Galla?
Gala.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Maybe your background and what led you up to making a decision to get out there and help transform men's lives. And I know you have your men's group or groups. So maybe we'll just start with that, a little bit about your background, what got to that pivotal point where you're like, I need to help men, and then we can kind of run with that. Cause I know you've got so many different groups you're probably working with. I know we'll have a lot of conversation going from there, but maybe we'll just start with that if that's a good place for you.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I came by it honestly. I didn't really choose to do this. I never
Mm-hmm.
made a decision. No, I didn't really need to help men. There's this great saying from a book that on career that gets recommended in men's group a lot, called "Let Your Life Speak," and
Yeah.
the line is "Vocation chooses you." So like, this kept coming back to me. This kept coming back around. Basically, this idea that like guys I kept hanging out with groups of guys, and we ended up talking about real life stuff, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting."
Yeah.
And so I was actually living in. So my background is I grew up as a hockey player, so I loved in the
Nice.
dressing room after
Yeah.
going to battle, how guys would talk about their relationships or whatever, And
Yeah.
I just really liked that. Probably because I didn't get much of it in the household growing
Yeah.
up myself, but
Yep.
I was like, "Oh, that's really cool. Guys are talking about the real stuff."
Yeah.
And then going out in the world, I faced a bunch of adversity, and along the during those times, I had groups of guy friends that I could reach out to. But as I got older, I got focused on career and all this stuff, and that stuff started to fade. Like those friendships started to fade. So I found I had less and less support around me.
Yeah.
And then I fell in love with a woman, moved down to Mexico, which
Yep.
was a dream life. I got to live at the beach and surf and learn Spanish and all this stuff. But I was very
Yeah.
lonely because friends would come and visit for a week and then leave, or
Yeah.
the like 6 months of the low season, it was just like desperately quiet and lonely there.
Yeah.
And so I threw a bunch of my friends into a Facebook group just to scratch my own itch. At the time, Facebook groups were new, so my friends were like, "Wow, this is cool." The women didn't engage, but the guys did, and they started talking
Yeah.
about their relationships and their kids and their all this stuff like that. So, and then just kind of took off from there. They started inviting their friends, and then it became a men's group. So I had no intention of doing this.
Right.
And even today, I there's some days where I wish I was doing something a little easier and maybe more
Right.
surface level. But
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
one. This is what I keep getting pulled back into. So
Yeah, exactly. Well, just, your comment on, not having conversation, at home with the family and,
yeah,
expand on that a little bit and also just not only necessarily, I mean, yes, your story, you can go with what you can go as deep as you want with that, but I just have a feeling that's happening with a lot of men in their previous as they were growing up, so talk a little bit about that.
yeah, it's a super common theme we see in men's group. It's like, I grew up in a household with a very loving family. Kind of looked ideal from the outside. We did all right. We never had a lot of money, but my brother and I always had whatever we wanted, and for the most part, and my parents loved us, and they put a lot of energy into getting us into sports and making sure we got good schooling and all that stuff. But there wasn't a lot of acknowledgement of feelings, and there was a lot of disapproval and shame used when like we weren't doing whatever they wanted, especially as we became of age and young adults and we started to
Yeah.
want to live our own lives. There was a lot of disapproval there.
Yeah.
And so, which isn't their fault. My dad came from a family of 11 kids. So he wasn't
Yes.
getting much attention or
Oh
conversation,
my gosh. Right.
right? His
Yep.
dad was working in the coal mines when he was 12 in Ireland, and then set out for his own life, a new life, when he was 15. He bought
Oh
his own
my
ticket to
gosh.
take a steamship across the ocean and settle in Canada. So what horrible life was he leaving behind there? And then there's the wars
Yeah.
before that. So like
Right.
there wasn't a lot of opportunity for these guys to like talk about their feelings and talk about,
Yeah. Yeah.
be nurturing, because life
Yeah.
is hard.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's a really good point. For those who are listening, and start thinking about your lineage, and your generations before. I've thought about that. I looked at my dad, and I would assess him, but I would think, well, what about my grandpa or his father? What was he like? And man, the evolution just in a few generations already, because it was, I think the men were kind of closed off, and
Oh yeah.
I don't think they knew how to communicate necessarily, or at least
Nope.
express feelings, or that was taboo. You don't do that, but I still think that message is actually still there today to a certain degree. Men, you got to hide your feelings. You got to be strong, and I don't think that's the right thing to do. I think that's actually the opposite, because then we just kind of suppress and suppress and suppress. And before you know it, end up doing these things for an escape, but even know why you're even doing it anymore.
Yeah.
Food, drugs, alcohol, sex, porn, list goes on and on and on,
Oh
with
yeah.
these challenges that are holding men back, so anyways, we can go to a lot of different directions with that, but, you mentioned lonely in Mexico, and I think that's really interesting. Now, my background, myself, like I said, 16 years. I gravitated to Tony Robbins. He wasn't the only one, but other people. And I remember him just sharing stories about people kind of doing these things, kind of like just going for it, and going to different parts of the world. Or, some of them maybe had hit certain levels of success in their business, but it always kind of came to, rather whatever route they went, they may have been felt lonely, or, they weren't feeling fulfilled. So I was just kind of curious when you said lonely in Mexico, if you could expand on that a little bit. Like, what do you mean you were lonely? Is it feel, you weren't contributing, you were, what did that mean to you?
Yeah, very good question actually. And I've done Tony Robbins and all that stuff too. I've
Yeah.
always been somebody who's been interested in personal growth, and I've been really curious about myself. So I've tried all those things.
Yeah.
And yeah, for me, lonely was like I was quite popular. Like
Yeah.
this is what's interesting, right? Is when I threw these guys into this Facebook group, like a lot of these guys are really popular, and some of them were like very successful, like on TV,
Yeah.
pro athletes, celebrities, authors, podcast hosts. I
Yeah.
just had a mixed bag of these guys from my entrepreneurial network, and
Yeah.
like they all felt the same thing. They all said, "I have lots of people around me, but I have nobody to talk to about the real
Yeah.
stuff."
Right.
Yeah, and that's how I felt too. I had friends I could surf with, people
Got
coming
it.
down to party because it's Mexico. That's what people do on
Yep.
vacation, you know?
Yeah.
And but I had nobody to talk to about, the difficult relationship with my father at the time, or
Mm,
my relationship issues, or my own emotional stuff, or like I was amazed that these guys who were like leading figures and living in places like New York or London or these big cities, popular, successful men, doctors, investment bankers, lawyers, had the same issues that I was facing, and or other issues that I didn't even think about. Like one of the questions was like in the early days that really got things started was like, "Hey, my wife just had 3 miscarriages. I
yeah.
have no idea how to support her."
Right.
Right?
Yep. Yeah.
So it's not lonely. It's just this peculiar
Yeah.
isolation from confidants, from people
Yes.
to talk to about the nuts and bolts everyday guy stuff.
Yeah.
And that's a problem because we had that for millions of years growing up in tribes and going on hunting with men. There's a lot
Yeah.
of research that shows that like we had that. We would talk about life and everything
Yep.
around the fires at night while we're out hunting, all that. And nothing was really a secret. And then it was only in the last 200 or 300 years during this industrial revolution, where like in the agricultural revolution, where we started to become more isolated and men were just expected to work.
Right. Yep. Yeah. I think that's so true in regards to the whole connection piece.
Hmm.
Yeah, I totally get that.
You can relate to that. You can relate to that definition of loneliness for me, that weird
Yeah.
peculiar
Well,
isolation. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, or just like you said, no one to talk to. Like, where do you go? And
Yeah.
from my observation of men and women are just wired to connect and to care and to nurture. and I don't know if men aren't, but I haven't really seen that, you know. So when we have challenges and issues, it's like, where do we go? How do we communicate this, right?
Yeah.
Um,
We don't
so
wanna
that
put
I
it
could,
we don't wanna stress out our partners, right?
right,
We don't wanna burden our friends. Like, I have friends that'll
right,
be there for me, but even still, as a guy who runs men's groups, I hesitate to share that sometimes.
yeah,
And then also, I think the biggest thing for me is that I was ridiculed growing up for sharing, right? So there's like a pretty deep fear inside of me, even still as a guy who's done a lot of emotional work and runs men's groups. I
yeah,
still fear to share stuff completely transparently with my even my partner who's great with that stuff. I
yeah,
still feel fear, you know? So there's
yeah,
like I think an issue of ridicule there.
yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
So then that ridicule, is that something you experienced then from childhood that you feel like you're still gonna get ridiculed if you were to open and to share with your partner, or is that just something else in regards to a different experience?
I think so. Hold on one second, Daryl. There's
Yeah.
a bunch of noise outside and I'm going to close the window. One second.
You got it, man.
Sorry. Real live podcast here. Yeah,
That's what it's all
I don't
about.
know
Yeah.
exactly where it came from. I think it's just
Yeah.
partly from that post-war generation of fathers, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, and then also from like, oh, we like who didn't have the luxury to feel, so they had no like opportunity to learn about that stuff
Yeah.
or to communicate in that way or share their feelings or their experience. And then
Yeah.
also just like sports, like you know,
Yeah.
you're allowed to get angry, but nothing else. And then just like the media and then like yeah, especially with I've noticed in our men's groups, especially when it comes to like women, it's like even though my partner and I are close and she's great at feeling like managing my emotions when they come up and being there, that's why we're together. She's the best I've
Yeah.
ever met. She makes me feel
Yeah.
very safe. But like even still I'm scared to share the stuff with her because I'm afraid of
Yeah.
being judged as weak. I
Yep.
don't know if it's
Of
like a
course.
biological role as provider or hunter or
Yes.
whatever, but you know.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I guess it's one of those things as we continue to evolve and work through that, right? You know, it's
Hopefully.
something that you just know it's there.
Yeah.
So with hockey, did you collegiate level, or what was your hockey career? What would that look like for you?
I played competitively until I was 18, so I played all
Okay.
the minor league hockey and a little bit
Oh,
of junior
nice.
and stuff, but nothing really
Uh,
significant. Yeah.
the reason why I ask is, I can relate to. I'm an athlete at heart. Played sports up to high school,
Great.
almost to college, but took a different direction. But still did triathlons. And anyways, the point of, for me, I don't know if you can relate to this, or other men in your men's groups, is that identity crisis.
Mhm.
Where you see yourself as this, an athlete, a hockey player, whatever it may be, and then all of a sudden, we put so much into that identity because it just fills us up, whether that's right or wrong, it just does. And then that's not truly who we are, though, as men. It's just part of a phase of our stage of a life we went through. And I think we get caught up in that identity, an athlete, hockey player, football, baseball, whatever it may be. And it's not going to take us. That's the point I'm trying to say, is it's not who we truly are deeper
Mhm.
within, right?
Mhm.
So I don't
Mhm.
know, have you found that yourself, other men? I guess that identity crisis, and kind of like, how should a man approach that and understand that and work through that? Give me thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a great question, Daryl. And honestly, this is a topic that comes up occasionally in men's group. We talk about it
Yeah.
fairly often. I'd say the
Yeah.
big ones are like boundaries and relationships ending and saving relationships and communicating better. But like shortly behind that's kind of identity, like who am I?
Yeah. Yeah.
And often if a guy stays in like our community long enough, they end up at that place because that's
Yeah.
where most of personal growth work leads.
Yeah.
And I've seen lots of guys struggling with this and having questions about purpose and identity.
Yep.
Me, I learned in a pretty dramatic way. I got sick, so I got bit by
Mm.
a tick on a surf trip.
Oh,
And I got
wow.
Lyme disease, which is
Oh,
like just a bacterial infection, just like any
right.
other
Yeah.
virus,
Yeah.
whatever. And all of a sudden, I went from being this man about town, dating a lot,
Yeah.
speaking at conferences, and as an entrepreneur with a pretty cool looking business. Taking because this was my first men's group, I took entrepreneur men on adventure trips. So we go heli skiing, skydiving, surf trips, sailing trips.
Nice.
Like it,
Yeah.
it looked like the dream, and it was the dream.
Yeah.
Making good
Yeah.
money, doing
Yeah.
meaningful work, having fun,
Yeah.
and and then all of a sudden I went from being that at like 32 to like lying in bed in my parents' basement, not able to go for a walk around the block for like
Right.
3 years.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
so I had to answer that question: who am I without all
Yeah.
those things that I define myself by? The,
Yeah.
the women, the work, the
Yeah.
entrepreneurial stuff, all my friends that fell away because I wasn't able to
Yeah.
see them. Like,
Yeah.
who is Sean without that? And what I
Hmm.
realized and what I learned through reading and talking to people about it is that these roles like hockey player and stuff are like, they're just t-shirts we put on or hats we
Right.
put on, you know,
Yeah.
but they're not
Yeah.
who we are.
Yeah.
And so you see a lot of pro athletes really struggle with this after they retire.
I'm
Like,
sure.
that's got one of the highest rates of depression and anxiety and stuff is athletes once
Right.
their career is done.
On the main stage to all of a sudden feeling like a normal everyday citizen, there's probably a huge gap there, you know?
Yeah, and just so many things have changed, like so many little things that nobody considers. Like, there's such a structure for a pro athlete. Like,
Yeah.
you wake up, you get on the bus, you go to the
Yes.
arena, do a practice skate,
Yeah.
you eat lunch with the guys, you come back, you have a nap, you go and do your pregame skate, you go and talk to the media, and then you go play. That's like every day or whatever. And then
Yeah. Right.
and then it's like, you're in this tribe of guys that you feel close with and you go to battle with, and then
Yeah.
you built in community, all their wives are friends. And so there's all these support pillars as a part of that like nobody
Yep.
people are like, oh, he just misses the game. And it's like, no, he's completely unmoored. His whole world has just been every support
Yeah.
pillar he has just been taken away for the most part,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. You
So, and
know,
then
yeah.
just to quickly answer that, just to quickly wrap this point up,
Please. Yeah.
I don't mean to ramble, but like what I got to about the who am I question
Yeah.
is like, I'm just some people would say it in a woo-woo way, like I'm just a spirit or a soul. For me, it's
Yeah.
like I have certain preferences, I have certain tendencies and gifts and personality traits that are
Yep.
just me, certain things that I'm drawn to that
Yeah.
will never change.
Right.
My unique set of core values and sweet personality and the
Yep.
difference I want to make in the world. That's
Yep.
who I am, you know? And some people would
That's
say that's
right.
my soul or whatever, but it's not, the sports I play or the work I do or the partner that I have.
Yeah. Well, that perspective you just shared with us is more freeing and allows you to flow through this journey, I think, a lot freer and more fulfilled doing that.
Yeah, because then all those
Um,
external things aren't as personal, right? You lose your job. It's like
exactly.
not really
Yeah.
about you. It's like,
Yeah,
oh, okay.
exactly. Totally. But the good thing is, though, for the listeners out there, if you're a man and you are struggling with an identity crisis, that could be from like being working to retirement. I mean, there's through life. I think we're gonna go. You go through multiple of these. I'm referring to them as identity crisis. It could be a change of stage of life, whatever it is.
Yeah,
There's resources like this, I mean, there's
yeah,
coaches out there. I think that's the thing that that's what really drew me to focusing on men. When I first started coaching, I coached men and women, probably coached more women. I noticed that because they were more open and, vulnerable and willing to do the work. I think men are just as eager and hungry for it, but it just, once again, what we were saying earlier is they feel like it would be a sign of weakness and all this stuff. But just wanted to say, give a shout out to there's resources for men, like this, and with that, tell us a little bit about your groups. I feel like that'll be kind of cool. I think that'd be kind of a good way to segue into what you're doing, your groups, and I'm sure we'll have some more questions from there. But why don't we just start with that? And what your groups look like? I think you have different types of groups, but I'll let you I'll let you
yeah.
give the details.
Well, first of all, I'm not here to sell anybody on joining our men's group. Like, I'm here to
Yeah.
encourage guys to, or anybody listening to, like, grab onto any tool they can to help their
Right.
journey. Like, there's this
Yeah.
stigma that needing any support or help or talking about things is weakness. When in reality, it's no different from going to the mechanic when your car breaks down.
Right.
Like,
Yep.
if you're a new dad, right, or if you're retired for the first, obviously these are new challenges you're running into, or your partner cheats on you. We don't have this knowledge. So why are you
Yeah.
why is there the expectation that you should have all the answers? Like, so whether
Right.
it's a book or a podcast or a coach like you, Daryl, or
Yeah.
a therapist or like a men's group like what I do, like what I've seen in men's groups, what I've observed is the guys who put their egos aside and look for tools to help solve the challenge. Those are the guys who win.
Yeah.
Those are winners. So there's this
Yeah.
stigma that like men's groups are for losers, but in reality, I see those are the guys that are winners because they're not being cowards. They're not avoiding their own feelings or their own
That's
shit,
right.
and
Yep.
they're actually like taking
Yes.
actions to improve things.
Yes.
That's a winner.
Yes,
I was gonna swear
absolutely.
there. I'm not sure. Am I allowed to swear here?
Go ahead, yeah.
I was gonna say
Hell
that's a
yeah.
fucking winner.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
absolutely.
so men's groups is just one useful tool. There's so
Yeah,
many, and
yeah,
I like men's groups because I find it useful to hear perspectives from different guys.
yeah,
Because you go to one coach, you get one perspective, and that's really good for some things. And in
yep,
combination, they work really well, like coach and therapist. and a men's group because you get to learn certain things over
Yes.
here, bring it to the group,
Yeah.
learn things to
Yes.
the group, bring it back. So yeah, I started mensgroup.com partly because I was really frustrated with how other men's groups were being run.
Yeah.
There was so much cheesy bullshit around them,
Yep.
chanting and
Yeah.
ceremony and spiritual stuff and First Nations names and
Yeah.
talking sticks and
Yeah.
dancing, getting naked in the woods and dancing and celebrating your balls and
Right.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Right.
it's for some guys, it's exactly what they need. But for most guys, what I saw is that they just need to talk about the nuts and bolts of what's going on in their lives right now.
Yeah.
And nobody was doing that. So I'm like, ugh,
Yep.
I gotta do this. So
Yeah.
found the domain mensgroup.com. And basically our men's groups are very simple. We have topic specific. So you come in, join the self-improvement community. It's an online discussion community, member
Yeah.
list, event
Yep.
pages, private groups around topics. And
Yeah.
then basically there's a whole bunch of different men's groups you could choose to tune in on. Topic specific ones,
Yeah.
or general support ones. And like we have topic specific groups for no more Mr. Nice Guy, like boundary setting stuff,
Yeah. Right.
saving relationships, ending relationships,
Yep.
managing your emotions, anger management. We've got groups for very specific niches of guys: gay, bi,
Oh,
trans
wow.
guys, guys that are going through divorces, guys that are dealing with anger issues, addictions.
Okay.
And basically, our format's so simple. It's just you show up. We don't do any bullshit. The facilitator doesn't do any speeches. It's just like, let's
Yeah.
get into it and let's go around the circle and hear what's going on in each guy's lives. And then
Yeah.
the facilitator asks each guy one question. Hey, is there a specific topic you'd like to get into today? Something you'd
Mhm.
like to get feedback on? Something that's been on your
Mhm.
mind?
Yeah.
And then a guy might say, no, this week I'm good. Just here to support the guys. And then another week he might say, got into it with the wife again, or I'm having this issue with my kid, or I'm
Yeah.
struggling with, porn addiction or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And then we just talk about those things. So it's really like, let's just get together and talk about what's going on in your life. And then guaranteed there's 3 or 4 other guys in the group who have been through the same thing or are
Yes.
going through the same thing. There's no new
Yeah.
problems.
Yes.
So that's how our men's groups work. And it's a
Yeah.
lot different than everybody else.
Yeah. Well, I just want to, reemphasize the whole peer to peer. I've also done men's group, in-person men's groups. Had my own for a while. Actually, kind of co-hosted it with another friend of mine. We did it for years, and those are, it's those are fantastic. They're wonderful. But I think that the richness of them, and this is just for the listeners. I know this, Sean, is just that peer to peer group. As you're talking about these other groups out there, they're, and I know they exist. They're the weekend thing, strip down, go into the woods and do all that crazy shit.
Yeah.
The problem with that is if they don't have a follow-up system, that's the challenge. And I think we need that consistency, that place to come to. I don't know how often your men's groups, what's the frequency, but whatever, whether it be weekly or biweekly or monthly, whatever it
Bi-weekly
is.
for the most part. Yeah.
Yeah. Just
Rotate.
to
Yeah.
yeah, just to know that you can go there and to connect and hopefully to the like-mindedness too. Like people are coming not just to yeah, and has a different pace. Some men are gonna go a little bit slower, gonna be a little bit like apprehensive. Is this shit work? What's going on here? And then, in order to really get the return, you gotta go full out and be vulnerable and then go for it. That's where that transformation really kicks into gear. So that's really cool stuff. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
You
Yeah.
touched on one point there, and that's relevance. Like that's the most important thing is that guys want to talk about what's going on in their lives right now. So the
Yeah.
issue with dancing in the woods and like eye gazing exercises or whatever these cheesy men's groups do is like those are actually helpful. Like sure, and like standing 6 inches away from the other guy's face and looking into his eyes, yeah, maybe that's really helpful for a guy who's struggling with confidence issues
Yeah.
or has wants to show up better and be more confident with people. But like I was in a men's group where like the coach spent the first hour like drawing circles of hearts and explaining what he felt about the heart and what it meant. Meanwhile, there's a guy beside me who just watched his dad get dragged over the side of their family fishing boat and drowned to death.
Oh my gosh.
And
Yeah.
he looked like he was about to explode. I'm like, this guy needs to talk. Eventually, I interrupted the coach running the men's group, and I'm like, this guy needs to talk. Can we please get into this? And sure enough, he needed to talk. And so it's like, yeah, we strive men's group. We really strive for relevance. So we put all the
Yeah.
guys who are going through divorces together. We put all the
Yeah.
old guys, the 85-year-olds where all their friends are dying and they're trying to find purpose at that stage of life.
Yeah.
Put together the young guys who want to talk about career and dating and stuff. So yeah,
Yes.
relevance is like one of the key things that I think a lot of these other organizations are missing out on.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You said men and ego, and it's funny because that's one of the as to some talking points. I knew we could go in a lot of different directions today, but since you mentioned it, I thought let's talk about men and ego. And we all have egos, not just men. Women have egos too. But what have you found in your little path and journey already? Like, what's it gonna take for men to silence the ego? Dr. Wayne Dyer say ego stands for edge God out. So I'm sure there's a lot of little playoffs with that, but what is behind that with men versus maybe even a woman, and what do men need to hear about their ego and how it can actually be hurting them, holding them back? Even if they're playing a big game, they could actually do more and be more fulfilled in life if they just understood ego could be getting in the way. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that or anything to share around that.
Yeah, I do, for sure I do. I don't think much about ego personally because
Yeah.
I just think of more like in my prefrontal cortex than the sort of monkey mind, the amygdala,
Yeah.
which is its job is to try to protect us.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful that it's there to try to protect us, to look out for issues and stuff. And part of that protection mechanism is to try to keep us emotionally safe, and so it'll try to
Mhm.
keep us from embarrassment and from things like that. And fair enough, because back in the day when we were living in tribes, like if you were kicked out of the tribe, if you're ostracized, that would mean death. Some beast
Yeah.
would eat you within a couple days. So, like, there's very real reasons why we have this mechanism that like tries to keep us safe emotionally and like tries to keep keep us looking confident and all this stuff. But the reality is that it's a flawed system because it tries to keep you safe in some of the wrong ways,
Yeah.
and so it can make you show up in some of the wrong ways that actually hold you back from what things you want, like connecting with people or certain achievements. And what I've seen in men's groups is that one of the best things to get to drop ego is just to get around other guys who have already done that or are working on that.
Yeah.
So time and time again, I'm surprised, especially in this men's group for entrepreneurs I ran for a long time. Like, if you get guys in a circle, these high powered businessmen, how like if I share my own personal stuff, I put my ego aside and share some sensitive stuff, and then I used to plant it so that the first guy in the circle would have a big personal issue.
Yeah.
Maybe he'd even start to tear up a little bit. Maybe he'd just get emotional, even just a
Yeah.
little bit. Ego's gone for all the guys
Right.
once they
Yeah.
saw that they weren't going to get judged.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
that's the challenge with ego, is that it operates off. It's often coming from fear, you
Yeah,
know.
that's right. Totally.
So it's like
Yes.
you put guys in an environment where you see they're not acting that way, where they're sharing, they're not putting up a front,
Yes.
and their truth starts coming out, and then you get
Yes.
practice with that. So again, it's
Yeah.
like I really like the group environment for that, seeing
Yeah.
other guys, having role models.
Absolutely. No, that's a great point. I just want to emphasize that. That's totally cool. I've seen it as well in play, being
Mm.
involved with a lot of the personal development. And yeah, when you get in that space and someone just opens up and they're vulnerable, it just sets the pace for everybody else. So that's just the nice good thing about a peer group. When someone's open, they're like, shit, if he opened about that, then I can open about mine. And then the power of just that vulnerability and opening is just kind of takes place and moves forward with there. So
Yeah, because for a lot of guys, they're
yeah.
very confused about how to like drop their ego. They don't understand that
Hmm.
it's a concept, right?
Yeah.
And they don't understand what that looks like or how a guy would even communicate like that. This is also
Yeah.
why guys have trouble making friends, because they don't know even how to communicate with a guy in like a in an intimate way, not a sexual way, but like an intimate,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
caring, loving way, that
Yeah.
and without being perceived as gay or whatever, And so I think
Yeah.
a lot of guys just need to see what that looks like. And they're
Yeah.
like, oh, you know,
Yep.
that's how to communicate without ego.
Yeah.
That's how to
Y
think about things without ego. Oh, maybe that's my ego. Like separating it out too, guys start to be able to notice that. Oh, that's my ego talking. This is my truth or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And that's a good one too. I mean, that's, as I've mentioned so many times in so many conversations, awareness is number one. When you
Mm,
actually are aware, like you said, oh, that's my ego talking. That's that voice inside me that wants to protect me, but also it's my fearful voice. Just hearing that is huge,
yeah,
to then all of a sudden just, okay, either I don't do anything or whatever the voice is telling me, just that awareness is a huge first step to creating some sort of change or transformation, in your life. So,
totally.
yeah,
I've seen that there's
yeah.
like the two most powerful words in the English language for this are "me too,"
Mhm.
and that's why I think the group thing. That's why the group thing works for me so well, because like as soon as
Yeah.
another guy says "me
Yeah.
too,"
Yep.
all of a sudden my fear is melted away. All of a
Yes.
sudden the ego doesn't have as much oomph behind it, it's not
Yes.
as charged as it is when I'm feeling fearful.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah. I had a thought, it'll come back to me when you were saying that. Yeah,
Friendship
it'll come back to me.
or what was
I
it?
don't know what it was. This
Sorry, I
with
interrupted you there.
No,
My
you
bad.
didn't. You're good. It'll come. It'll come back.
Yeah,
A
yeah.
lot of things are firing off. I'm taking a few, jotting down a few things. Well, one thing that came through me and was Kevin Hart. He's one of my favorite comedians. He makes me
Yes, I
laugh my
love
ass
Kevin, yeah.
off. He just laughs. He goes, I'm not gonna try to do it in his words or his personality, but basically said all men are pissed off. I'm pissed off all the time. And he goes, I'm a married man. I'm always pissed off. I wake up, I'm pissed off. And I have to say, man, I'm a married man with kids, and you just sometimes just feel this like, just heaviness of like responsibility,
Yeah.
or you feel like you're not doing enough. Like
Mhm,
it's never enough.
mhm.
I'm not making enough money, or my business isn't growing fast enough, or whatever else it might be. I don't know. Any thoughts on that? I think ultimately he was kind of coming around. And I put in my note about happiness. Like how does a man find happiness, and not I'm talking about in the future, but in their present life, how do they find happiness? I don't know if you have any thoughts around that at all. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
I have tons of thoughts because again, I get to
Yeah,
observe this stuff in men's groups. Like, I don't think I
yeah,
know anything. I don't think I'm wise or that I should be advising anybody on anything. But like, I get to sit there as like a fly on the wall for like thousands
yeah,
of guys and hear how they think about these things. This is
right,
a really common one. Like this feelings of overwhelm and like pressure that a lot of guys
yeah,
feel, myself included. This is a big one for me.
yeah,
Part of the reason why I think I got sick as well is just like not having outlets for that, not understanding it.
totally, right,
And the answer that you probably don't want to hear, or if you're listening to this, is that you probably learned that from your parents. That's like a dynamic you learn from somebody along the
yeah,
way, and it's often driven by fear.
mm-hmm,
So the answer to like for me getting around that is the more I get into my own internal stuff, the more I get into those feelings, especially in the moments when I'm feeling that anxiety or that overwhelm or that pressure. If I step away and I breathe into that,
yeah,
what often happens is some emotions come out. So there's a well there of pain
yeah,
or whatever it is from whatever happened in the past. I don't tend to dwell on it, but it's like, okay, that's where that's coming from.
yeah,
Because if you step back and look at it, it's like you're doing great, man.
yeah, right, totally,
Most guys are doing great. They're
yeah,
doing as best they can. They got they're providing. They're good dads, and it's like, so
yeah,
where's this angst coming from? And it's like this.
yeah,
It's this broken programming that we have from our upbringings or we learned from our parents. And
yeah,
the research shows that these kinds of beliefs and ways of like responding to the world are
yeah,
like passed down through up to 7 generations.
yeah,
So maybe
wow,
your great 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 grandfather in the war felt really
yeah,
fearful of being able to provide because there was a potato famine in Ireland or whatever.
right,
And then all of a
yes,
sudden, your father's that way and you're that way.
yes,
That's real. Like that's science. That's not my opinion. That's science,
yeah,
So
yeah, that's so,
those are my thoughts on it. Is like that's a very
yeah,
real thing. You're not alone if you feel that way, and the way out of it is to investigate your internal world.
yeah, yeah, totally. On that note, with investigating your internal world, I mentioned happiness. And I don't know if you have, just talking about designing our life, and I've been through Tony stuff, and I've heard other personal development, you know, gurus out there, and you can have anything you want, and design your life, and I was a big believer in that. And to me, in my heart, I still am, but I think I kind of had a different view, 20 years ago. I've been doing this for a long
Yes,
time, to
more
where I am
immature view,
today.
more
What?
immature view back then. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
totally. A little naive,
yeah,
immature. Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Um, and I've worked with, like I said, men and women, primarily focused on men now, but just like goal setting and, what do you really want, and getting uncomfortable. Um, and I'm sure that those conversations are having somewhere in one of your groups about goal setting, designing your life.
yeah,
But
yeah.
just thoughts on that in regards to, do you set this goal that, if you make 100,000, do you set a goal for making 1,000,000, or is that like stupid? Is that actually backfire in their faces? I just love to see your perspective, what you've seen, what men are, how much are they willing to go after versus not? I don't know. Anything you can share on that?
Yeah, great question, Daryl. You're asking great questions here. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the default biological programmings in humans is that we, not just men, but I guess it would be more amplified in men since we are more providers and hunters,
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
be that we are always gonna want 30% more than what we have.
Of course. Yeah.
That's why humans have done so well, because we have this
Yeah.
programming that's basically like, yeah, make 100,000, you're going to want 130.
Yeah.
But within that, then it's like, yeah, how can I say this? I've observed a couple things. Everybody's truth is real, and it's their own. It's in you already. Like your core. It's the stuff I was talking about before. When you strip away the external things, it's like the identity. It's like what are my tendencies? What's really important to me? What are my core
Yeah.
values?
Yeah.
That stuff's in there, right?
Yep.
And that could be playing pro sports. That could be working on $1 billion solar farms in India to help people. That could be um, living at the beach in some exotic third world country.
Yeah.
But for most people, it's not. For most people, their core values are quite simple, and they're happy just doing meaningful work, and that they find uniquely meaningful, and having a good family, and like having a dog and living
Y-
it. And so I've observed through, especially the last men's group I ran with those entrepreneurs, that often the guys that are living these flamboyant lifestyles, like what I used to live in Mexico,
Yeah.
aren't actually super happy. And they're not,
Right.
if you really get to know them, you start to
Yeah.
realize it's driven by fear.
Totally.
It's
Yes.
their way of managing their daddy issues.
Yes. Yes.
Like they felt some void, and so they've overachieved in their work,
Yes.
or they've overachieved in their lifestyle, which was me. Like
Yes.
had me to live at the beach, or be a professional DJ, or these kinds of things. That was me trying to feel better about myself through my work.
Yes. Yes.
And so
Exactly.
so for me, I'm realizing that was an immature way to think about designing my life. And I've never been a settler. I've never really worked jobs. I've always done these crazy businesses and lived in different places. And so I would consider myself very much like that, and a lot of guys in men's group. But the reality is that as I get older and more mature, similar to you said, it's simpler.
Yeah.
I love being near the ocean. It's just so important to me to be near the sea. I love
Yeah.
working with people. I love talking about real meaningful stuff. I love
Yes.
being in nature every single day. I love being working with people, and it's
Yep.
like, okay, well then that starts to define my
Yes.
ideal lifestyle design, not the immature one I had before of Lamborghinis and living at the beach and
Totally. Yeah.
being with the hottest woman possible.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. So values, I'm hearing you saying you got to put check in with what your values are and
yeah.
truly go
I think
after
that's it.
them,
I think it's like core values. I think it's that
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those things
Absolutely.
about you that are never going to change.
Yeah. Totally. Absolutely. But somehow we've got this other message, right? That I'm not enough. I got to do more. And the word that was coming through me when you were just talking about that was validation. We're looking for that validation,
Mm,
bigger car. Look, I validated myself. I'm somebody important. I'm successful. And man, it's not a good way of living life. And I don't, for the listeners out there, if you're there, might be, this may not be feel like the truth to you or a challenge, but something you need to check in with yourself. And you're the only one going to know at the end of the day, am I happy? Do I feel fulfilled? Am I,
yes.
like you said, ocean, being out in nature, helping people, like your mission, like what is it about you that you love to do?
Yeah.
So if you're not doing that, and you're doing this other stuff, you can ask yourself, why am I doing it? And I'm not saying play small by all means. I'm saying, play big, go for it as long as it feels really good.
Yeah, it's just gotta feel. It's just gotta be you, like honestly you,
Yes.
and not what you
Yeah.
want, not what you want to do, but what you're like built
Yeah.
for. It's almost like your
Yes.
natural tendencies and gifts. Like, have you
Yeah.
ever met a janitor who's just like loves his job?
Yeah. Right.
Or like a cashier, like a grocery store, and they like make everybody's day.
Yes.
Like in my opinion, and where I'm at with my understanding maturity and stuff, they might have a bigger impact on the world than somebody who's
Totally.
building, like a friend of mine who built a $600 million or whatever it is solar farm in India to help all these people. But then he's a
Yeah.
dick to the waiter when we go out for dinner, and he'll
Right.
bail on me last minute and just he's the flakiest friend I have. Like, what's
Yeah.
better? Who's making more difference? So
Yeah.
unfortunately, society has, I don't know when it went this way. I think it was like in the 50s when we started to get a little bit of a cushier life, and
Yeah.
marketing's really started to ramp up, and
Yeah.
society started promoting junk food
Yes.
values that are
Totally.
um, flashy and exciting, but like aren't actually good for us long term. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of research on what's good for humans long term. Relationships is number one.
Yeah.
You have high quality relationships, family, partner, friends, community.
Yep.
Meaningful work, contribution, um,
Yes.
things like that. But society is saying money, likes on Instagram,
Yes.
uh,
Oh my gosh.
being with the most
Yes.
attractive person possible. And unfortunately, it's pushing us this way and doing it more and more and more, and away
Yes.
from the things that are important
Totally.
that
We
actually
just
make people happy. And so it's trying as best as it can. It's like trying to shuttle that out and being like, what's really important to me? Who am I? What am I
yeah.
feeling inside?
Yes. Well, you just hit on something. I mean, I can't remember her name. The couple, they went on this trip across America, and I think it shouldn't be murdered. I can't think of her name right now. But social media is my point, and the point connected with that story is her life and their life looked like this amazing thing. They're traveling together, but it just is little pictures and blips of people's lives. But people are buying into social media. They're looking at this and going, man, especially as men, maybe men are looking and going, oh, man, he's so successful. House is so nice, and all he's traveling all over the world, or not all over the world, but doing all these different things. So, what do you say to that? Like, besides you're buying into a bunch of bullshit. I mean, you just got to realize, I'm not saying these people aren't having any happiness in their life, but I think the meaning that we may attach to it, by seeing these little pictures of people, and they appear to be kicking ass in life. But the reality is they're probably very much just like you. As a matter of fact, they could be worse off because they're trying to keep up with the Joneses. I don't know. But long-winded here, social media and how that's playing into men's emotions and or lack of purpose or not. I don't know. Any thoughts around that?
I think it's different for every individual. For the most
Yeah.
part, I don't think it's a healthy thing. That's just my own opinion because I know
Yeah.
that most people struggle with low self-worth. And I'm
Yeah.
somebody who really struggled with a low self-worth from that upbringing I was talking about with
Sure.
disapproval and shame. So I
Yeah.
went out in the world trying to prove myself. And social media was really difficult for me, especially in the low times, because I felt like, wow, I'm the only one who's having a hard time right now.
Yeah.
And that isolation is really dangerous
Yeah.
because it makes you feel like you shouldn't reach out to people because you don't want to look like the only guy who's having a hard time.
Right.
And then that isolation, like humans aren't built for that. We're hardwired to be in community and stuff over millions of years of living that way. So
Yeah.
like then we start to feel anxious, depressed, and then that makes your challenges you're facing a lot harder to work through.
Yeah.
So me personally, I think it's terrible for me.
Mhm.
I do know people that don't have an issue with it, but they're rare.
Yes.
And this is like going to sound pretty close-minded to some people who are like really in that matrix,
Mhm.
but all the really wise people that I know typically end up moving out of cities towards the country or nature and remove themselves from that
Yeah.
matrix
Yes.
because that's where the wisdom is. It's in silence. It's in um,
Yes.
you know, reading books and journaling and like getting to know yourself, not
Yes.
necessarily in the chatter of social media of like this event, that event, this movement, that movement. It's like
Yeah.
that stuff is good in a sense because some of those things need to be talked about. Like Me Too needed to happen, Black Lives Matter needed to happen, but like,
Right.
but like also like I'm my own man on my own mission, and like I'm doing good in the world, so like I don't need that exposure,
Yes. Yeah.
necessarily. I don't.
Yeah.
Some people would argue that I would, but I'm like, I don't need to hear what the general public thinks about X, Y, Z.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of noise,
It's just
It's a lot of
noise. It's
noise.
just
Yeah.
noise, and people
Yeah.
disagree who are in that matrix. But
Of course. Of
I
course. Yeah.
I tend to strongly disagree with them. I'm like, you guys are just sheep,
Yeah.
following along with this big marketing matrix
Yeah.
we've created called social
Yeah,
media.
totally. You gotta be so careful with it. So you hit on something I was gonna ask earlier, you just brought up, this is perfect with rituals. My words,
Awesome.
rituals. Yeah, like, what would you say to men out there in regards to things that would really help them? I mean, it could be exercise. You mentioned journaling, it's getting out in nature. Maybe this is the list, but just any thoughts on not only doing it, but maybe you've seen the before and after. Maybe you've seen the man who just worked 80 hours a week and all of a sudden he exercised a little bit and got out in nature and connected with people and talked to them and developed some nice little rituals that all of a sudden just by doing that dramatic change in their life. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, great question, Daryl. The obvious easy one is exercise.
Yeah.
Guys have like because we were shunned to express our feelings when we were younger most of the time.
Yeah.
When we do get emotional, often that comes out as anger because
Yep.
that's one emotion that we were allowed to feel. Like we
Yes.
wouldn't get ridiculed for that playing sports. So like moving that energy is really helpful, especially when you're angry. But going a little bit deeper, I think the next one would be like the ritual of being in a group with a bunch of guys.
Yes.
Because what I've observed and what guys tell me when they leave our community, because eventually they might outgrow it or whatever,
Yep.
is that one of the best things they took away, if not the most important thing, was they learned how to communicate better with people in their lives by being in the group and watching other people communicate. So all of a sudden, communicating with their wife through conflict gets easier. Communicating with their kids, they're better at. Communicating what they need in work, setting
Mhm.
boundaries. It's all getting easier for them. So
Yeah.
like the practice of coming back to a group of guys who are also trying to make improvements, having those good influences and role models, like the research says, that's incredible for people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that the opposite is true, that the detrimental impact of a negative person is actually 6 times stronger than a positive person. So it
Amazing.
really shows the
Yeah.
importance of like plugging yourself into the right community and
Yep.
repeatedly showing up. But then the most important one, and I'm sorry this is a ramble, but these are the big 3 for me:
No, it's good.
exercise, the group stuff, and then this is the bit more of a fluffy one that a lot of guys might gag around, but basically the internal stuff is it.
Mhm.
I heard this great
Absolutely.
quote that says, "Life is an inside job."
Yeah.
The external stuff will take care of itself if you handle the stuff that's going on inside of you, the
Yeah.
emotions, how you think about things, your beliefs, getting to know yourself in that way, which sounds cheesy, but it's really not, because we all have these emotions inside of us, and our nervous system holds on to them a lot of the time, and it's just how our bodies work. It's just
Yeah.
physiology.
Yes.
So well documented in the science community that the nervous system holds on to pain and stuff. So I found it most beneficial, and I see so many guys seeing it beneficial to get into that stuff. And the
Yeah.
best way to do that is so simple. Anytime you're triggered into some kind of feeling that's intense, instead of doing what you usually do, um, ordering junk food, turning on porn,
Mhm.
having a drink,
Mhm.
getting upset, overworking. Instead of doing that, step away from the thing and just sit there and breathe for a minute.
Mhm.
What that's gonna, and just get curious about what's going on in your body. Wow, where do I feel those feelings? Like where's this impulse coming from to pull up porn right now? And from my own life, a quick example, it's like when I was told this by a wise old mentor of mine, he's like, anytime you feel anything intense, just step away
Mhm.
and just breathe into it for like even like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
That's the move. That is the
Mm.
healing move. And I was
Yes.
like, that sounds simple. But then sure enough, like I'd be, after a long day of work on the computer, I'd be home alone. And I'd feel like, I should, pull up some porn or whatever, or,
Right.
I
Right.
should do this kind of thing. And then instead I step away and just sit down with it and breathe for a few minutes. I'm like, I have a headache. Oh, my eyes hurt from being on the screen all day. Oh, okay. So what I'm trying to do is create a state change to change,
Yes.
like, so you
Yeah.
start to build a relationship, these feelings and some of these unconscious emotional drivers, these impulses that are they're leading us to take some of the actions that we don't actually want to be taking, some of the unhealthy behaviors and stuff.
Yes.
I've had other moments where I feel really angry about something and I go and sit down on the couch and I just breathe into it. I'm just curious, where is it in my body? Oh,
Yeah.
my chest feels tight. Ooh, my neck feels tight right now. Ooh, I feel something welling up my belly. And then all of a sudden the anger's gone and I'm feeling those pre-crying tingles. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Something in me actually feels sad from this trigger. You
Yeah.
start to understand your triggers and responses, and then you can start to, that awareness allows you to manage them a lot better. So that is
Yes.
the real move, if I'm being
Yes.
honest. Like that's
No.
how guys make progress.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And I hope the
Thanks.
listeners out there really heard that, because that's, like I said, it's the awareness, and you don't need to do this massive I don't know, 2-hour deal. You just, that, like you said, just be with it. Be aware.
Yeah.
Be present,
Yeah. And
and it shall pass.
there's nothing floaty or woo woo about it.
Right,
It's
right.
like, it's not
Exactly.
spiritual. It's just, your body's got stuff going on in it right now.
Yeah.
Your monkey mind, your ego is trying to protect you from those uncomfortable feelings
Yeah.
that you're feeling in the moment by distracting you with something, or by like state change, like food, whatever, and
Yes.
numbing out,
Yep.
booze. And so it's like, if you just step away, as hard as it might be, and sit with it even for a few minutes, even if you end up doing the thing after anyways, you're
Yeah.
building that relationship with that part of you.
Yeah,
You're
that's right.
building that muscle of
It's
listening
right.
to that
Perfect.
quiet voice inside that is
Yes.
you, that is your truth.
Yes, absolutely. That's huge. Build that muscle, and you're interrupting your pattern too. So
Yes, totally.
we just operate so, like, it's 80% of it's coming from our subconscious mind. That's a program.
Yeah.
Anger, go eat food, go to porn. It's like we're like robots until you do what you're just talking about. You interrupt it at least a little bit. The more you do it, you keep interrupting and building that new muscle and realizing, shit, I might have control of myself here.
Yes,
It's a breakthrough. Holy shit.
totally.
Yeah.
I haven't yet seen an area of life where this doesn't apply. So again, because I don't want to share examples from guys in men's group because I would like to keep that confidential for the most
Of
part. But like
course.
for me, like, when I was dating and I just gone through a breakup and I was really lonely, I had a tendency to seek validation from women in sex because I didn't feel very good about myself. And so women, when I was younger, more immature man, were almost like trophies. Like, oh,
Yeah.
if I could get that, then I feel good enough about myself, right? And
Yes.
you're smiling as though you can
Yeah.
relate or
Right.
somebody who can. And so
Exactly.
like, yeah, this is the first topic that my wise old mentor doctor friend told me was like, Sean, next time you feel the urge to pick up the phone and text a bunch of people or swipe through, dating profiles or whatever, instead step away and just breathe into it. Give yourself a minute and just get curious about where those feelings are. That's it. Just hang out with it.
Mm-hmm.
Do this 5 times a day at least. Sure enough, when I stepped away, what was welling up was sadness.
Yeah.
I was sad over my breakup, which is understandable, and I was sad because I felt lonely. Okay, well, what healthy things can I do to replace that? Oh, I can go hang out with a friend. I can go and exercise. I can go. And so I broke that pattern. And sure enough, after like a month of just doing that, stepping away and breathing into it, and man, if I was sorry, this is turning into a ramble, but I feel like
No,
it's
it's
really
perfect. It's
important. Is
good.
it
It's
okay?
good. Yeah, you bet.
I don't care. He said, I don't care where you are, do this. So I would sometimes go into my car, like if I was out in public and I run into my ex girlfriend and feel like intense things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd handle that situation fine. But then I go straight back to my car and I'd breathe into it. Or if I
Yeah.
was in a cafe and I see a woman walk in, this actually happened a couple times. See a beautiful woman walk in, I start to fantasize about like,
Yeah.
what would it be like to be like with a woman like that? The clouds would part, the sun would shine down, my depression would be magically lifted, right?
Right.
And then her boyfriend would walk in, and then I feel down about myself. And I
Right.
go, "Oh shit, here's this thing again." So
Yeah.
I go and walk into the bathroom, and I'd lock myself in the bathroom, and I'd sit in the toilet with my clothes on. I just breathe into it for a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
Anywhere I was, if I felt triggered into anger, sadness, anxiety, doing one of those habits I don't want to do, I
Yeah.
applied this, and over those weeks and months, like it
Yeah.
would change those responses. And so in that
Yes.
same situation, I wouldn't feel as triggered. I wouldn't feel as upset. I wouldn't feel as charged.
Yeah.
It was amazing because if you were telling me this beforehand, I wouldn't have believed you
Yeah.
that it could be that simple. But it
Yeah.
was, and I see men's group guys doing the exact same thing and having a lot of success.
Well, it's amazing because the reality is they probably only have like a handful of triggers anyways, that they're just doing over and over and over. And they finally identify one, do what you're talking about, breathing through it. There might be a few others too, whether it be relationship, money, success, something along those lines. We have a few triggers, but it's not like there's 100 of them. I doubt it.
No,
It's just a handful that are literally controlling, you're allowing to, because you're really controlling it. You're allowing this stuff to control us versus doing this different method that you're talking about. So,
yeah,
you know,
yeah, exactly. And like a big one for me was seeking that validation, right? And like that from women and like chasing a lot of sex and chasing a lot of like dating and relationships and stuff. And like overdoing this over like only just it doesn't take long, like 2-3 month period, 6 month period. Like
yeah,
all of a sudden I didn't feel that same angst around women anymore. I was just kind of like, yeah, I'll go on a date if I think somebody's cool, and yeah, if it
yeah,
leads to a physical encounter, fine, that's cool. But like I wasn't as desperate for it. I wasn't as needy, and like I was thinking about it in a much healthier way.
yeah,
And the only thing I did was this process of like when I'd feel triggered, step away and feel into it. And over time,
yeah,
I'd feel, and occasionally I'd cry during those. Like when I
yeah,
go and sit on the couch, a few tears would drop,
yeah,
and sometimes I feel frustrated or these different feelings would come up, and just slowly, little by little, it felt like I was letting the feelings out of this well
that's
that had built
amazing.
up
Yeah,
from
yeah,
maybe my childhood and growing up,
right,
had being rejected by women and stuff. I don't
sure,
know where it came from exactly, but like over time, it's just little by little took the pressure off. So then
yeah,
when I found myself in those same situations later, I didn't feel as much
yeah,
to the
yep,
point where I almost feel nothing at all. Like women are just like another part of life now, where I'm like,
yeah,
oh yeah, that's cool. I'm in a lovely relationship and I'm
yeah,
the happiest I've ever been. But like also, it's not a big deal.
right,
I'd
yeah,
probably be okay if we broke up.
yeah, right, yeah, amazing.
I never thought I'd get to a place like this with this subject. So I
Yeah,
encourage guys to like get in. And again, life is an inside job.
yeah,
Whatever tool or method or you can find to like get into yourself and understand these things. That's what really moves the needle.
absolutely, yeah, and that really brings it right to the top. I could not agree with you more.
Yeah, cool.
It is an inside job, one of my programs is called Inner Work for Men because hell, you can
Yes.
have all the shiny things around you, but you got to do the work inside, and that's the true victory and satisfaction and transformation and fulfillment and everything. So really cool stuff, brother. Really good stuff. So once again, Sean Galla, men's group. Where can we find you? I can put some stuff in the show notes here, and this will also be uploaded to YouTube. So I want to make sure they can find you. So where's a Facebook group page or something? Where's a good place to first find you and see some of the work you're doing?
Yeah, just mensgroup.com.
Oh, okay.
I'm not
Perfect.
making this about me. I don't want to direct it to any of my social media accounts or anything. It's just like mensgroup.com. And
Yeah.
on there, you'll see videos and stuff and a blog with useful resources. And, if
Yeah.
you enter your email there, you can get access to some of our free men's groups to try it out and see how it feels. If you
See how
want
it feels. Yeah.
test out a men's group, we got a bunch of drop-in groups led by really good facilitators, including
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
And then we also have free discussion community, so discussion
Nice.
group where you can get in and post questions and get guys answering stuff within minutes, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
And so that'd be it. And then from there, if you want to join the community, you can do so or whatever. But we'd like to make it as approachable as possible for guys. So that's it. Mensgroup.com.
Cool.
Throw in your email there.
Yeah.
Check out some of our free stuff or join a group.
Yeah, good stuff. Any other thoughts? Any other comments? You want to share? Anything else in addition to what we already covered?
Yeah, I think it's just like I really want to. I've been preaching about this a lot. Just like, how are you going to overcome the challenge you're facing without people around you who are supportive of the changes you want to make?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is a big blind spot for a lot of people, and I don't understand why it is that way. I think it's because, especially guys, we're so focused on providing and like being a good family, being a good dad and partner, and like work, career. That takes up a lot of our energy these days. But like, people don't realize the detrimental impacts it can have to like not have supportive people around you.
Yeah.
I've seen it in my friends. They're going to start a business, and their friends who work jobs and are operating from fear are like, "Oh, well, what about benefits? Oh, not everybody can do that." It's like, I've seen it. I've seen how having the wrong people around you can hold you back.
Yeah.
So it's like there are places out there where you can go and get around the right people, whether it's a coach or a men's group, to like be around supportive people who can relate and who will cheerlead you on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think the sad fact is that most people at their workplaces, even in their families and their friends, if they were truthful, they're not supportive of the changes you want to make because they're scared of losing you. They're scared of you changing.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
And so like
Totally.
whatever tool you can find, go find it, go get around people. Because life is too short not to.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I said that so many times too. I'm like, think of every day getting like this juice of life, read a book, go find positive things that make you think bigger, things that make you go deeper, things that make you feel more fulfilled, because you got to go search for those things. As sad as that is, you really do have to kind of intentionally go find it, because all the other shit's out there, just turn on the news. It's just, it can be kind of sad and depressing sometimes, all the things you're hearing, or the fighting, the bickering, the division in the world, all the stuff. You're just like, oh my gosh, I guess I kind of need to know what's going on in the world, but I got to find intentionally the things I need to feed my mind every single day, important, so important.
It's not easy, but like,
no,
do you want to get over your challenges or not? Like
exactly.
finding a good mechanic is like getting your car fixed isn't easy either, but we're used to that.
Yeah.
Like if my dryer breaks down, like it's just one little wire, but like it's a bit of a pain to find a guy, but it's worth it,
Yeah, totally.
And it's no different here. Like it might be a personal challenge or a work challenge or interpersonal challenge or romantic challenge, but it's like there's lots of stuff out there that'll help you navigate that and help you get through it quicker. It's just a lot of guys are too cowardly to like look at their stuff.
Exactly. I couldn't. I mean, that's the biggest thing is, I guess the message is don't be that. Have the courage to face, like you said,
be
doing
brave.
the inner work. Yeah, be brave.
This stuff's uncomfortable. That's why our minds are trying to keep us away from it through distractions and but like that's where the gold is in life.
Yeah, totally.
And honestly, a lot of this, like these shenanigans we see through social media and stuff of conflict and people in all these dramatic situations and people living in these really dramatic ways, it's like when you start to get it into your own stuff, you realize how much that drives your behavior, and you start to get really suspicious about other people and how they behave. Like psychology knows this already, but it's like a lot of the conflict is caused by people's own daddy issues.
Yeah.
at like
Yeah.
a world country level and on like an individual level. So,
Yeah.
it really speaks more to this idea of life is an inside job. That's all you really need to focus on, because that will create you a better person.
Yeah, totally.
That will turn you into a better person. That will make you more soft and gentle and understanding. And a lot of
Yep.
these issues that were brought up in the Me Too movement or Black Lives Matter or these things will take care of themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unhappy people do unhappy things, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
go find tools
Yep.
and accelerate your progress over
Yeah.
overcoming your challenges.
Yeah. Sean, thanks so much for your time. This is some really good stuff. Awesome conversation, and I wish you well continued success. I know you're rocking it with your men's group, so let's keep that going, because there's many men out there that need resources, and hopefully you and I are a couple of resources.
Yeah.
We're not the only two, but there's a lot out there. I guess that's my biggest message is for men is, men, just you don't have to do it alone. Do the inner work, and go find something that's going to work for you. Some positive stuff. So
Yeah, man.
yeah. So once again, thank you for your time. Greatly appreciated.
Great questions, Daryl, and I really appreciate
Yeah.
what you're doing. So keep up the good work, man. And I
Yeah.
hope to see some of you guys who are listening in the men's group community soon.
Yeah. Sounds really good. All right.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you,
Great.
Sean. All right. Be
Thank you,
good.
Daryl.
All right. Bye-bye.